Today, we're going to unpack a pretty provocative, maybe even unsettling idea. That the Enlightenment, the entire foundation of Western reason, didn't die in a war or in some revolution. It died in a Los Angeles courtroom, broadcast live to millions. And this is the story of how that happened.
I want you to picture this. You're walking through the absolute ruins of Frankfurt. Church walls are just skeletons against the sky. And there are these two philosophers, Adorno and Horkheimer, who are just haunted by one single question. How did a civilization that basically worshipped reason end up building factories for industrial-scale slaughter? It was a question that was going to lead them to a very dangerous conclusion.
And here's the diagnosis they came up with. Truth isn't always something you find. Sometimes it's manufactured. That knowledge and power are always tangled up together. And this idea, well, it was like a slow-acting toxin, a suspicion that would just lie dormant for decades, waiting for the right moment to get into the bloodstream of an entire culture. And that moment, well, it wouldn't come in a European capital. It would come in a California courtroom.
Okay, so now we hard cut, to the O.J. Simpson trial. There's a camera, and it's just gliding across this courtroom with this kind of predatory patience. It's not just observing, it's hunting for a moment. And it finds it. It tightens its frame on the defense attorney, Johnny Cochran. Everything else just dissolves into the background. It's just his face and a single black leather glove.
And then he says it. A simple rhyme, right? It's a mnemonic device, something to help you remember. But the camera? Oh, the camera blesses it, broadcasts it, and elevates it into something that feels like a revelation. And in living rooms all across America, a simple act of legal persuasion was mistaken for an act of factual discovery. Millions of people learned, right then and there, that the courtroom wasn't a place where truth is found, but a stage where truth is performed.
The man who let the cameras in, Judge Lancito, he thought he was democratizing justice, opening it up for everyone. But instead, he fundamentally changed its operating system. By making justice watchable, he, probably without even realizing it, made objective truth optional. And this whole thing just reveals a fundamental misunderstanding most of us have. See, courtrooms were never actually designed to discover some deep, metaphysical truth. Their main purpose is something else entirely, to manufacture what you could call legal reality.
A verdict isn't a statement about what really happened. It's a bureaucratic story. It's an official narrative that lets society close a case, restore order, and just move on. The system doesn't need the story to be factually perfect. It just needs it to be final and enforceable. It's a machine for creating legitimacy, not for uncovering truth. Okay, so if the goal isn't finding objective facts, then what in the world is it? Well, to get that, we have to look at one of the most famous trials in all of Western culture. It's a story that perfectly illustrates what a court is really for.
King Solomon never found out which woman actually gave birth to the baby. He didn't even try. Instead, he came up with a test, and it was based on a pretty reasonable assumption that the real mother wouldn't let her child get hurt. His goal wasn't archaeology, it was governance. The child needed a home, period. That was the only way to restore social order. The verdict just had to be reasonable and final, not necessarily factually correct.
And this right here, this shows you the fundamental difference. Science, truth-seeking, can afford to say, hey, we don't know yet. It can leave a question open for hundreds of years. But governance? It can't wait. A court must render a verdict to keep things from falling apart. And that's not a bug in the system, it's the system working exactly the way it's supposed to.
Now, before the cameras, this whole function of the court was sort of a tolerable fiction, mostly because it was private. But once the public started watching, well, that set the stage for a totally new kind of trial. I mean, historically, we've had show trials, right? From Socrates to Stalin's purges. But they served a very, very different purpose.
This new kind of trial means we really have to sort public trials into three different types. First, you've got the tyrannical show trial. Think Stalin's purges. Its only goal is to enforce one reality through pure terror. Second is the civilizational show trial, like Nuremberg, which is there to create a new legal framework to rebuild society. But the O.J. trial, that created a third kind, the entertainment trial. And it doesn't enforce or build a reality, it dissolves the very idea that there is one.
And that distinction is absolutely fundamental. The old show trials, they used the law to kill freedom by forcing a single, terrifying truth on everyone. These new entertainment trials, they kill something way more foundational, our epistemic stability, our shared sense of what is even real. They just offer up a marketplace of competing stories and say, you choose. So once the public learned to consume truth as a form of spectacle, this logic, well, it didn't stay locked up in the courtroom. It became contagious. It started to infect every other part of our public lives.
First, presidential debates turned into these litigations where winning the narrative was all that mattered, not clarity. Then, cable news just adopted the format wholesale, splitting every single issue into a prosecution versus a defense. And then came social media, a permanent 24/7 courtroom with no rules, no judge, and a billion juries. Truth just became a constant, exhausting lawsuit.
And this brings us all the way back to where we started. Back to those philosophers wandering through the rubble of Europe. You know, Adorno and Horkheimer, they were terrified that the state would devour truth. What they never imagined was that truth would simply lose its audience.
Now look, the ground for this was already cracked. For decades, postmodern thinkers had been arguing the truth was just a construct of power. And cultural wounds like Vietnam and Watergate had taught an entire generation to distrust any official story. The OJ trial didn't invent this worldview, it just consummated it. It broadcasted it directly into every home in America.
The trial proved, in real time, that a winning narrative doesn't have to be true at all. It just has to be more compelling, more elegant, more emotionally satisfying. A catchy rhyme, as it turned out, could beat a whole mountain of evidence.
What we were all watching, really, was just the latest chapter in one of the West's oldest fights. It's the battle between the philosophers, like Socrates, who are chasing truth, and the poets, or the sophists, who master the art of persuasive performance. It's a raw fight between evidence and narrative.
And on national television, for everyone to see, the poets won.
You see, when Judge Ito decided to televise that ritual, he forgot something crucial. You can't broadcast a ritual without changing it. And when you change a civilization's core rituals, you change the civilization itself. So no, the Enlightenment did not end in Europe's rubble. It ended in a Los Angeles courtroom with a glove, a rhyme, and a camera that taught millions to confuse persuasion with reality.